If you're over 75 and you still drive yourself to your own appointments, still remember your grandchildren's birthdays without writing them down, still garden, still laugh until your eyes water at dinner, I need you to know something. You are not lucky. You are not a genetic exception. You are doing something specific, something most people your age have quietly stopped doing, whether they realize it or not. For decades, the standard medical advice for seniors has been simple: slow down, take it easy, expect the decline. But some of the most compelling longevity research to come out in recent years tells a very different story. It suggests that the people who stay sharp, strong, and independent well into their 80s aren't doing anything exotic. They're not spending fortunes on supplements. They're maintaining a small handful of daily habits that cost nothing, that anyone can start today, and that most people abandon without ever realizing what they're giving up. I'm Dr. James Whitfield, and for more than 20 years, I've worked almost exclusively with patients between the ages of 75 and 85. And in that time, I've noticed something that the research is only now catching up to confirm. The patients who age the best, the ones who still carry their own groceries, who still remember names at the family reunion, who still feel like themselves, share a very specific, very learnable set of behaviors. Researchers following thousands of older adults over more than a decade have found something striking. Those who maintained just 4 or more of these specific daily habits were dramatically less likely to experience what's called accelerated functional decline, the kind of rapid loss of independence that pushes so many people into assisted living years earlier than it should. That's not a small effect. That is the difference between living your life on your own terms and living it on somebody else's schedule. Now, I want to tease something before we go any further, because I know some of you are tempted to skip ahead. The number one habit on this list, the most powerful of all 6, is something almost nobody talks about. It has nothing to do with diet or exercise in the traditional sense. Most doctors don't even bring it up during a routine checkup. But it may be the single strongest predictor of who keeps their independence after 75 and who doesn't. So stay with me until the end, because that one could genuinely change how you think about the rest of your life. But before we get into the list, I want to ask you something. Drop your age in the comments below, whether you're 68, 74, 81, or somewhere else entirely, and tell me which of these habits you think you already have. I read every comment on this channel. This community means a great deal to me, and your story matters. So leave it down there, and let's have a real conversation. Now let's count down from number 6 to number 1, starting with something that sounds almost too simple to matter, but the science behind it is anything but simple. Because what I'm about to share next, something most people never connect to their afternoon fog or their unsteady balance, is more important than it sounds. Number 6, drinking water strategically, not just casually. Here's what most people get wrong about hydration after 75. They assume it works the same way it did at 45. It does not. As we age, our kidneys become less efficient at conserving fluid, our thirst signal becomes blunted, meaning we can be meaningfully dehydrated and simply not feel thirsty. And our blood's ability to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the brain and muscles drops with every bit of fluid we lose. Think of your bloodstream like a delivery system for a city. When the river running through that system runs low, the delivery trucks slow down, packages get lost, and the whole operation starts to break down. That's what chronic, mild dehydration does to the aging body, quietly, over months and years. Researchers studying older adults have found that those who maintain consistent daily hydration tend to show meaningfully lower rates of urinary tract infections, fewer falls, because dehydration measurably impairs balance and reaction time, and better performance on short-term memory testing. Your brain is mostly water. Even a small drop in hydration causes measurable cognitive fog at any age, but after 75, the effect is amplified because your brain's compensating mechanisms are already working overtime just to maintain baseline function. Here's what separates the seniors who do this exceptionally well. They don't drink water only when they remember. They drink a full glass first thing in the morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else, because the body loses a surprising amount of fluid overnight just through breathing, and that overnight deficit tends to be larger after 75 than it was in midlife. Then they have a small glass with each meal, and one more in the mid-afternoon. One helpful addition: a small pinch of a mineral-rich salt or an electrolyte tablet in that morning glass. Because as we age, our kidneys have a harder time retaining the minerals that help water actually get absorbed into our cells rather than passing straight through. I had a patient, I'll call her Margaret, 81 years old, from Boise, who came to me describing afternoon brain fog, dizziness when standing, and what she called feeling like my thinking is wrapped in cotton. She wasn't dramatically dehydrated. She was chronically, mildly underhydrated. We made one change, timing her water strategically with a small mineral addition in the morning. 6 weeks later, she told me it felt like someone had cleaned the windows of her mind. Her balance improved. Her afternoon fatigue faded. One habit. Real results. Number 5, resistance-based movement, at least twice a week. I want to be clear about something, because this gets misunderstood constantly. When I say resistance movement, I am not talking about a gym membership or heavy barbells. I'm talking about any movement that asks your muscles to work against something. A resistance band, a light dumbbell, a wall push-up, even carrying your own groceries with intention. This distinction matters enormously after 75 because of something researchers call anabolic resistance, the reduced ability of aging muscle to respond to the normal signals that build and maintain strength. In practical terms, it means your body now needs more deliberate signal, more intentional resistance to hold onto the same muscle a younger body would maintain almost automatically. Your muscles aren't lazy. They're just harder to reach. And if you don't reach them consistently, you begin losing muscle mass and strength. A process linked, in the research, to a meaningfully higher risk of falls, a higher likelihood of struggling with basic daily tasks within just a few years, and a shortened, healthy lifespan overall. Studies following older adults who began twice-weekly resistance training have found real, measurable gains in leg strength and balance within just weeks. And something that tends to surprise people, a genuine improvement in how the body handles blood sugar, which in turn affects energy, inflammation, and even clarity of thought. The tiny power plants inside your muscle cells actually regenerate more efficiently when resistance exercise is part of your week. You're not just building muscle, you're rebuilding your body's energy infrastructure. The practical version of this is simple. 2 to 3 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes each, focused on the large muscle groups, legs, hips, and back. Resistance bands are ideal for this age group because they build strength progressively without stressing the joints. And here's a tip that matters more than people realize. Try to eat a modest amount of protein, something in the range of a palm-sized portion, within about half an hour of your session, because after 75, the window during which your muscles most efficiently use that protein for repair is shorter and less forgiving than it was in younger adulthood. Timing isn't a small detail here. It's part of the habit. That was only 2 of the 6. What I'm about to walk you through next, the habit tied directly to how your brain repairs itself while you sleep, is something almost no one explains properly, and it changes everything about how you should think about your nights. Number 4, a consistent, purposeful sleep schedule. Before I go further, if this video is giving you something useful, something you wish someone had told you years ago, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. And if you know someone between 70 and 90 who deserves to hear this, send this video their way today. This channel exists for one reason: to bring older adults the kind of research-backed, plain-spoken health information that a 15-minute doctor's appointment rarely has time for. Now, back to sleep. Because this habit is far more layered than simply going to bed early. After 75, your internal body clock, your circadian rhythm, begins to shift and weaken. Melatonin production drops substantially compared to what it was decades earlier. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the most physically restorative phase, the phase where your body does its heaviest repair work, shrinks considerably from what it was in your 30s. This is the phase during which growth hormone is released, the hormone tied to cellular repair, immune strength, and muscle maintenance. Here's what most people don't realize. Poor sleep after 75 isn't just about feeling tired the next day. Researchers studying older adults with disrupted sleep patterns have found meaningfully higher buildup of the same brain plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. Sleep, at this age, isn't a luxury. It's maintenance. The seniors who handle this exceptionally well don't just sleep more, they sleep consistently. They go to bed within roughly the same 30-minute window every night. They wake at the same time every morning, weekends included. They keep the bedroom cool, somewhere in the mid to upper 60s, because the body's ability to regulate its own temperature during sleep becomes less efficient with age, and a cooler room supports the deep sleep the brain needs. And they avoid screens for the hour before bed. Not just because of blue light, but because mental stimulation keeps the thinking part of the brain active in a way that measurably delays falling asleep. One small addition that helps enormously: 10 minutes of slow, deliberate breathing before bed. This activates your body's rest and repair system, lowers nighttime stress hormones, and makes it noticeably easier to reach and stay in deep sleep as we get older. Number 3, eating protein in a deliberate, distributed pattern. This is where I see the most dangerous misconception among my patients, and it genuinely concerns me as a physician. The idea that you need less protein as you age is not just wrong. It may be one of the most harmful pieces of nutritional folklore ever passed down. The truth is the opposite. Because of that anabolic resistance we talked about earlier, your body actually needs meaningfully more dietary protein per pound of body weight after 75 than a healthy adult decades younger, just to maintain the same amount of muscle. And yet most of the seniors I see are eating far less protein than they need. Often because appetite naturally decreases with age, and easy carbohydrate-heavy foods feel simpler to prepare. Research following older adults has found that those who consistently eat enough protein, spread across 3 or more meals a day, tend to maintain significantly more muscle mass, experience fewer fall-related hospitalizations, and show a stronger immune response to common illnesses like the flu. Think of protein like the bricks your body uses to rebuild itself overnight. Every night while you sleep, your body tears down old, damaged tissue and rebuilds it fresh. Without enough bricks, without enough protein, that reconstruction is incomplete. Over months and years, that shortfall becomes serious. The practical approach: aim for a solid portion of protein, roughly the size of your palm or a bit more, at each of your 3 main meals. Think chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, or legumes. The reason spreading it out matters so much after 75 is that aging muscle can only make good use of a limited amount of protein in one sitting for repair. Beyond that, the extra gets used simply for energy rather than rebuilding. Spreading your protein across the day makes every bit of it count. I had a patient, I'll call him James, 78, from Scottsdale, whose daughter brought him in after he'd lost a significant amount of weight that his previous doctor had dismissed as normal for his age. It wasn't normal. He was losing muscle, not fat, and his grip strength, a genuinely powerful predictor of long-term health in older adults, had fallen well below where it should be. We restructured his meals around deliberate, distributed protein. 12 weeks later, he'd regained real lean muscle. His grip strength had climbed back up, and he told me, with unmistakable pride, that he'd carried all his own groceries in from the car for the first time in 2 years. One small addition that helps here: pair your protein-rich meals with a little vitamin C, an orange, some bell pepper, a splash of lemon juice. Because vitamin C plays a role in maintaining the connective tissue, joint cartilage, and skin that, together with muscle, determine how well your body holds itself together as the decades go on. Now, the next one is the one I said would surprise you. It sounds too soft, too emotional to belong on a list like this. But stay with me, because the research behind it is anything but soft. I want to be absolutely clear. The research connecting social engagement to long-term health in older adults is not a nice to have. It is some of the most consistent, most replicated science in the entire field of aging research. Large studies tracking hundreds of thousands of adults over decades have found that chronic social isolation carries a mortality risk comparable to heavy, long-term smoking. Let that sit for a second. Being chronically isolated appears to be about as damaging to your long-term health as a serious smoking habit. Researchers studying older adults have found that loneliness is associated with faster cognitive decline, a meaningfully higher risk of dementia, and elevated inflammation markers in the blood. The same markers tied to damage in the heart, the immune system, and the brain's own wiring. Here's the physiological reason this runs so deep. Meaningful social interaction, not passive screen time, not simply sitting in the same room as the television, triggers the release of a hormone that lowers stress chemicals in the body, reduces inflammation, and activates the part of the brain responsible for memory and decision-making. Think of your social brain like a muscle. The neural pathways that fire during real conversation, shared laughter, gentle disagreement, and emotional connection are the very same pathways that maintain your memory and your sense of self. When those pathways go quiet for weeks at a time, they begin to weaken. And after 75, the brain's natural ability to rebuild those connections has already slowed considerably, making unused pathways harder to restore. If this is landing for you, if you're recognizing someone you love, or even recognizing yourself, please like this video and share it with a friend or family member, because this is something they need to hear too. The prescription here isn't complicated, but it has to be intentional. Aim for at least one meaningful, engaged interaction every single day. A phone call counts if it's a real conversation. A regular walk with a neighbor counts. A faith gathering, a book club, a standing lunch date. All of it counts. What doesn't count, neurologically speaking, is passive presence. You have to be actively responding, laughing, disagreeing, sharing. That active engagement is the stimulus that keeps your brain structurally healthy. I had a patient, I'll call her Dorothy, 83, from Charleston, who lost her husband of 54 years and withdrew almost entirely from her social life. Her daughter brought her in 8 months later, and Dorothy had noticeably declined on standard cognitive assessments in less than a year. We didn't change a single medication. We built her a social schedule instead. A weekly book club, a daily 20-minute phone call with a rotating list of friends and family, and a twice-weekly volunteer shift at the local library. 8 months after that, her cognitive scores had returned close to where they'd been before. Her daughter told me she seemed like herself again. Social connection isn't a luxury after 75. It functions like a biological necessity. One small addition here: pair your social time with light movement whenever you can. A walk with a friend, a gentle group exercise class, gardening with a neighbor. Combining the two seems to produce a benefit for the brain that's meaningfully greater than either one alone. And now, number 1. This is the habit that Dr. Whitfield and researchers in this field consistently describe as one of the most underused, entirely free tools available for staying sharp and independent as we age. Number 1, daily, purposeful cognitive challenge. Not crossword puzzles, not passive reading, though both have their place. I'm talking about something more specific and more demanding. The practice of genuinely learning something new. A skill, a language, a musical instrument, a new form of creative expression. Something that puts your brain into a state of productive discomfort. Here's why this ranks first. After 75, the brain begins to preferentially rely on the pathways it already knows well. It becomes remarkably efficient at familiar tasks and remarkably reluctant to build new ones. This isn't a flaw. It's a survival mechanism, an aging brain conserving its own energy by favoring the familiar. But that very preference is also the mechanism by which what researchers call cognitive reserve gets depleted over time. Cognitive reserve is your brain's resilience buffer, its ability to absorb age-related change and keep functioning well regardless. Think of it like the memory in a computer. The more reserve you have, the more your brain can absorb before you notice any decline at all. Long-term studies following older adults into their late 80s have found that those who engaged in genuinely novel, challenging activities for at least half an hour a day showed meaningfully slower brain aging on imaging, better processing speed and memory, and a lower likelihood of a dementia diagnosis over the following decade. Other research has found that seniors who describe their daily lives as intellectually engaging perform on standardized testing, like people a decade younger. The mechanism at work is neuroplasticity, your brain's ongoing capacity to reorganize and form new connections. That capacity does decline with age, but it never disappears. The brain retains real capacity for meaningful change well into your 80s, but only if you give it enough of a reason to change. Novel learning is exactly that reason. Learning a new language, for instance, engages several brain regions at once and has been associated, in some research, with a meaningfully delayed onset of dementia. Learning a musical instrument brings together fine motor control, listening, memory, and emotion in a way almost nothing else does. Even learning to cook an unfamiliar cuisine, because it demands reading, sequencing, attention, and hands-on skill, counts as real cognitive challenge. The practical version: pick one genuinely new skill every few months and spend 20 to 30 minutes a day actively engaged with it. The key word is actively. Watching someone else play the guitar on a video isn't learning guitar. Sitting with the instrument in your hands and struggling through a chord change is. That struggle, that productive discomfort, is exactly where the benefit lives. It's the mental equivalent of resistance training. The resistance is the point. I had a patient, I'll call him Robert, 79, from Portland, a retired civil engineer who, by his own account, spent his first few years of retirement without much that truly challenged his mind. He came in after noticing he was having more trouble recalling names and following complicated conversations. His scans showed nothing alarming, nothing you wouldn't expect for his age, but I wanted to see his cognitive reserve stronger. I gave him one instruction: pick something he'd always wanted to learn and do it every day. He chose oil painting, something he'd never touched in his life. He was genuinely bad at it at first, by his own admission. 18 months later, he'd completed over 20 paintings, joined a local art group, which handled the social piece at the same time. And his follow-up assessments showed real improvement, not just maintenance. Improvement at 79. One small addition worth mentioning: fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, or sardines a couple of times a week supports the same brain structures involved in learning and memory, giving your brain a bit of extra support while it does this new, harder work. I want to pause here, because there's something underneath all 6 of these habits that I think matters even more than any single one of them on its own. None of these 6 things, the water, the resistance training, the sleep, the protein, the connection, the learning, are about turning back the clock. I want to say that plainly, because I don't want you to walk away from this thinking there's some secret to reversing aging. There isn't. What these habits do instead is something I actually think is more remarkable. They help your body and mind make full, generous use of the years still ahead of you. I've sat across from more patients in the 75 to 85 range than I can count, and I can tell you honestly, the ones who do best are not the ones with the fewest wrinkles or the cleanest lab results. They're the ones who kept showing up for their own lives. The ones who kept drinking that morning glass of water, kept lifting that resistance band twice a week, kept going to bed at the same time, kept eating enough protein to hold on to their strength, kept calling a friend or a grandchild just to talk, and kept picking up something new to learn, even when it felt uncomfortable and slow. What surprises people most, in my experience, isn't any single habit. It's how much these 6 things reinforce one another. Better sleep makes it easier to want to move your body. Moving your body improves your mood enough that you're more likely to pick up the phone and call someone. That phone call, in turn, makes the water and the protein and the new hobby feel worth doing, because you have someone to tell about it. These habits aren't 6 separate boxes to check. They're one interconnected way of living that, together, adds up to something much bigger than any of them alone. And here's the part I want you to really sit with. It's genuinely never too late to start. I've watched patients in their 80s build every one of these habits from scratch and see real, measurable change within months. Your brain and body, even now, retain far more capacity to respond and adapt than most people ever give them credit for. So let me leave you with this. Somewhere along the way, our culture started treating the years after 75 like a slow countdown, something to be managed, endured, gotten through as gently as possible. I don't see it that way. And after 20 years of doing this work, I don't think the research supports that view either. These years can be, and often are, some of the richest, most connected, most genuinely alive years a person gets to live. Not despite your age, but in real, active dialogue with it. Strategic hydration, resistance movement, consistent sleep, deliberate protein, daily connection, purposeful learning. 6 habits. No prescriptions required, no expensive equipment, nothing that isn't already available to you starting today. They're not about erasing the years behind you. They're about making the absolute most of the years still ahead. Carrying your own groceries in from the car, remembering your grandchild's name without a second thought, driving yourself to your own appointments, laughing until your eyes water with someone who matters to you. That is what independence actually looks like. That is what a good quality of life means in plain terms. I'm Dr. James Whitfield, and I want you to know, it is never too late to begin. If this video gave you something worth holding on to, something you wish someone had told you sooner, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Every week, I bring you plain-spoken, research-informed health information built specifically for people in this stage of life. because I believe it can genuinely add years of quality to the time ahead of you. And before you go, tell me your age in the comments and let me know which of these 6 habits you already feel strong in and which one you're going to start building this week. I read every single comment. This community is one of the most engaged I've ever been part of, and that's entirely because of you. Take care of yourself. You are worth the effort.